What's the biggest frick up you ever made that was fixed before anyone knew about it? Instead of charging a customer's credit card for $150, I charged $15,000 and it went through. I ran up to her private office and immediately called the issuing bank, told them what happened, and they made it as if nothing happened. I did something similar once, and right in front of the customer, I immediately voided the transaction through the machine and just gave him both copies stapled together. So, I work in a CNC workshop, and we often engrave stuff. This particular guy wanted a nice wooden jewelry box for their wedding anniversary with a custom message he emailed me. For some reason he chose to give the box to his wife at the workshop. Not the most romantic place I can think of, but whatever. Wife starts to look confused and tear up. "You don't remember the date?" Guy turns pale, looks at me, says, "No, I'm sure it's a mistake." It's me. "No, I've copied it straight. Can't be Rahun." "Wait a minute. OMG, it's my fault. I'm so sorry. I will redo it right away. No need to pay. Please accept it as a gift." Wife gets angry a bit at me, but they leave with a different box and the correct date. Guy comes back next day and pays triple the original price without a word. Freaking smooth. My mom is a very soft-spoken, gentle woman. Only heard her curse once in my life. Very old-fashioned, super kind. So innocent. She's amazing. As a teenager I was a rebellious little crap, always up to no good. I had a best friend whose parents were super religious. We met at Christian private school, and we would get into mischief with each other. One time we were out around 2 AM and went to another friend's house we hadn't talked to in years that went to the Christian school with us. We knocked on his window and asked him to sneak out, but he said he couldn't. He then in turn apparently told his parents about it, and his parents contacted my friend's parents. If we got into any more trouble together we weren't going to be allowed to hang out anymore. So one night my friend and I rode one bicycle about 10 miles to go to this girl's house, taking turns sitting on the handlebars. We had a reason for wanting to go, but we didn't stay long. So after our long arduous journey, we set out on our return trip. Not 5 minutes after embarking, a cop pulls up and stops us. It's around 4-5 in the morning and I hadn't even thought about curfew being a thing. He called up both our parents, and my mom came to pick us up. He wasn't able to reach my friend's parents, so he left a message on the machine. Knowing this was the inevitable, forced termination of our friendship, I convinced my mother to drive to his house on a covert mission. He lived out in the boonies, so when we arrived at his house, she had to turn off her lights and drive stealthily down his country road off a driveway. He snuck inside while his parents slept, deleted the message off the machine, and we escaped scot-free. Till this day I still can't believe my mother did that for us. Super OG crap, totally uncharacteristic of her. My friend and I are still in contact decades later even though he lives in Thailand. Thanks mom. Only heard her curse once in my life. Mom, you need to turn the lights off when you turn into the drive-u. Goddammit Billy, I think I know how to handle a stealth mission. Was taking care of my neighbor's bird, and he flew out the house as I opened the door and went over and behind it. I shat bricks cause she really loves the bird and had it for a while. Heard him chirping on the trees behind the house and kept calling him Mango. 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 He came to the windowsill and I lured him in with food. Best believe I didn't let him out of his cage after that. Started an apprenticeship in IT and was woefully underqualified. I was given the responsibility of maintaining the intranet site for our whole department. Obviously given a role that's internal, so I couldn't freak up customer facing things. They underestimated my power. On one cheery Friday evening when half my department had gone home early, I was experimenting on the site, creating and deleting test pages in a hidden area. I got 2 different delete buttons on the same page, mixed up and accidentally deleted the whole site. There is no undo. I didn't have access to the changelog. What I did have was another tab open with the same site on it in edit mode that I forgot I had. I hit save changes on that page and voila, everything is back. After changing my pants I went home and spent the whole weekend terrified that my boss would find out. They never did. Fast forward 2 years, I've been training hard and now I design systems for our staff. Never fricked up that bad again, yet. 2 different delete buttons on the same page. Well, there's your problem. When I was in high school, my parents had a VW Golf and a station wagon. I had keys to both cars, although I normally drove the Golf because it was a GTI and a hoot to drive. Our local mall had the movie theater, arcade, and food court all near one particular entrance, which was normally my preferred place to park. One Saturday I didn't have much going on, so I got up, drove the station wagon to the mall, played some games, tooled around for a bit, hung out with friends, then got in my car and went home. When I got home both my parents were gone, which was weird, but I thought, it's cool. I can watch what I wanted on TV. So I grabbed a bag of chips and started watching some movie on HBO. About an hour or so into the movie I realized, hey wait a minute, I didn't drive the Golf to the mall, but I drove the Golf home. Oh crap, I realized my parents had driven to the mall in the Golf and used the exact same parking area I used. When I got out of the mall I must have seen the Golf, just got in it, and absent-minded driven home. My parents were still at the mall, had been for over an hour, which was a record for my dad, and I was certain my father was in the midst of calling the cops to report a stolen car. I jumped into the Golf, drove as quickly as I could back to the mall. Had my mother seen the way I drove, she would have killed me. By some miracle the exact spot my parents had parked in was available, so I parked the car. I then walked the couple rows over and got into the station wagon and drove home. My parents came home like 30 minutes later. I asked them how the mall was and my father started bitching about how my mother made him shop for a new bedroom set or whatever. But other than that, it was fine. I didn't tell them that story until I was into my late 20s. Submitted coursework from Module B on the due date of Module A would have been an auto fail. However, the system derped out and the teacher didn't receive any work from about half the class and asked us to email her a copy. I sent her the work for Module A, only realizing I would have failed outright once I saw what it done. Everyone in the class complaining about delayed grades and how they should file a complaint. I'm just sitting there thanking whatever divinity watched over that transaction. Always growing up my mom told me not to overload the dryer. It was one of those fancy expensive ones and she didn't want it to break. For years she said this and I never took her seriously. Then one time after I moved out they had me house sit for a weekend. I brought literally all my laundry and washed it in a single load. Stupid, I know. Ended up breaking the dryer. They were coming home the next day Sunday. I went full repairman and took the entire thing apart, or at least getting the whole front off and getting into the meat of the thing. Turned out I snapped the band. Called everywhere and no one had the band. Ended up finding this random store downtown that specialized in washer and dryer repairs. Went in and bought a band similar to what I needed. Went home, put it on, and put everything back together. Took up my entire Saturday. It's been 3 years and my mom still doesn't know. B. Never tell her. 2. Or any future problems of that dryer become your problems. Source. Fixing computers for everyone who knows I'm better at computers than they are. SMH. When I was in high school, I was dating this guy for a few months. I decided to send him a nude while I was getting ready for school. I took the picture, attached a detailed text, even though the most we had ever done was over the clothes touching, and hit send and finished up getting ready. 5 minutes later, I'm in the back seat of my mom's car and I opened my phone to check for a reply. I realized I sent it to my mom instead. I silently freaked out before I realized she obviously hadn't seen it yet, or else everything wouldn't be so calm right now. I saw her purse on the console between the front seats, phone peeking out with a text notification. I grabbed it as quickly as I could. She asked what I was doing and I just said I'm checking to see if I'm getting texts. I deleted it, triple checked, and deleted all evidence from my own phone too. I'm almost 24 now and I still am super cautious anytime I send anything even slightly questionable to anyone. I won't text my sister something with a curse word in it unless I check the recipient box twice. I was sexting my GF one day and my mom had texted during that process and I ended up replying to her message instead of my GF. I still get crap about it and it's been about 10 years. Yep, I told my mom I wanted her to sit on my face. Okay, not mine but a mate. Basically when he was a kid him and his brother were fooling around and throwing things at each other in the yard. A wayward throw sent the projectile right onto the windscreen of his dad's car, cracking it. They decided not to face the music and just went inside without saying anything. The next morning the dad before leaving for work comes in and says you wouldn't believe it. I was hosing the ice off the windscreen and it bloody cracked it. Luck skill maxed. Friends and I decided one night, at 14 years of age, it would be a fun idea to borrow one of our mum's cars. It was the first night I drove a car, and the first time I crashed a car. Drove it home and cleaned the dirt off, painted a rock blue and threw it at the mangled bumper. Friend's mum reportedly came home that day with a story about how some jerk must have hit her in the parking lot at work and driven off. It wasn't until about 7 years later she apparently turned to him one night and said, "Hey, you know how my car got damaged a while back? Was it you?" He confirmed. And she replied, "Oh well, at least insurance covered it. So less fix and more cover up frame job." I spilled red wax all over cream carpet when I was about 16. Then carefully cleaned it all up using printer paper and an iron. You lay the paper over the wax, iron on low heat, and it transfers the wax from the carpet to the paper. What made it harder was that my mum, one of those really particular, house-proud people, was napping in the next room the whole time. Had to do all of it without waking her up. When we moved out, there was a tiny stain still there, but she never picked up on it until then. Reminds me of what my wife did in our first rented place together. She spilled wax on the carpet and used the trick where you put down brown paper and use an iron. Except she had the iron way too hot and melted the cheap carpet. It left an imprint of the iron, and we had to pay to have it replaced when we moved out. As an undergrad in college, I worked in a research lab for the school's chemical engineering department. My partner and I were making a reactor that could contain hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas is the smallest molecule there is, which makes it very difficult to effectively contain. We made our prototype reactor and needed to test it to make sure it was sealed tight and could handle high internal pressure. To do this, we submerged it in a 55-gallon barrel of water and kept pumping air into it to see if any bubbles escaped. We kept filling it with air and didn't see any bubbles and wanted to know at what pressure it started to leak, so we kept pumping air in. It didn't leak. It exploded. Fortunately, the explosion was contained by the water, but all that air being rapidly released blew all the water out of the barrel and flooded our professor's lab. There was no drain in the floor in case of a chemical spill. You don't want that hitting the public water supply. So we had to break into the janitor's closet and got the entire lab cleaned up. To this day our professor still doesn't know about it, and it wasn't even the only time we accidentally blew something up or flooded his lab. And our project wasn't to design the reactor. The reactor was one component of the larger project. I can guarantee you if your professor knew, they'd just tell you it's the 10th time that happened. Good job cleaning it up. I got my parents' car impounded before going to work. I managed to find the people who called to tow it. I found the guy who towed the car itself. He gave me a ride to the impound lot. It cost me around $500 to get it back. No one ever knows. Narrator, but someone did know. I used to work at a call center for a popular gift company. This one couple calls up and says we need to cancel our order. I look it up and tell them UPS already has the order to deliver it. They tell me you don't understand. We are sending this to our son and his wife. We accidentally put his ex-wife's name on the card. It will ruin Christmas if they receive this gift. I was finally able to call UPS and get them to not deliver the package. Not my screw up, but dang. Whoa, I think that's one of the best I've read in this thread. I can almost taste the feeling of panic. When I was 17, I worked for the city's newspaper, and one of my jobs was to add up all the orders for the next day's papers so they could print what they needed. Once I made a huge error and they printed off thousands of extra papers. I was very lucky. They covered up for me, quietly disposed of the extra papers and didn't tell the boss. I was just asked very nicely to never, ever do it again. The day I learned how to take apart a VCR and put it back together again will be forever in my memory. I was 14, and like most 14-year-olds, any excuse to yank it is enough. Found my dad's pea stash, home alone for an hour. Let's do this. After about 10 minutes of my dad's well-worn 90s bootleg porno, the tape decided to jam. Cue me trying to eject the tape and making things worse. Frick. Let's just say the blood wasn't in my brain at this point. Grabbed a screwdriver and disassembled the VCR. Carefully removed the tape without breaking the ribbon and wound it back so it looked untouched. I put the VCR back together and re-hid the porno so my dad wouldn't find out, and I never was questioned about it. The biggest kicker about it all is that my dad is no longer with us, and as an adult now I'd love to tell him this story as he would find it hilarious imagining me in a flat panic trying to repair a VCR mid-wank. I have a lot of adolescent things like that, well, not masturbatory, just silly juvenile stuff that I would love to tell my dad now. It's hard when you lose them before their time. Sorry for your loss. When I was in first grade, I was carrying a Tupperware tray of cookies into the school lobby for a class party. Mom had taken me to school early rather than the usual bus ride. A few feet into the school, I tripped and the cookies scattered all over the lobby floor. The school principal was the only witness. I was mortified and started to cry. He quickly picked up all the cookies and placed them all back in the container and told me it's all right. Nobody will ever know. Go on to class I did. My classmates and teacher ate all the cookies, complete with high traffic lobby cuties. Sorry, Mr. Kinnison. I just couldn't hold our dirty little secret to my death like we agreed. Now we'll both die in prison. I broke my parents' car's front bumper. Then, they didn't realize right away, drove the car and totaled it. They never knew. Dang, that's luck alright. Being a young inexperienced driver, my mother asked me to move my sister's car so she could back out. Well, 14-year-old me goes casually walking to my sister's car. I get in and crank it up with no problem, check my mirrors, and buckled up like a good driver. That's when crap got real. I put the car in reverse, slowly backing up until my heel slips, causing me to put all my weight onto the gas pedal, sending this 2001 Monte Carlo flying out of the driveway, across the street, and into the neighbor's yard. Luckily, in the craziness, I was able to brake and come to a complete stop. Realizing I was okay, I laughed my butt off, but then fear set in as I got out to inspect for damage. And holy crap, there was none. Nothing knocked loose and the vehicle ran smoothly. So I casually moved my sister's car out of the neighbor's yard and off to the side where I intended to go. And to my surprise, no one in the house heard it, and I went about the rest of the day thinking I was a sly dumb mother sucker. I very nearly injected a premature baby that had Down syndrome with 10 times the amount of Lasix I was supposed to give him. I had put the decimal in the wrong place when I did the maths on the dose. That baby would almost certainly have died if I'd given it to him. I had the liquid drawn up in the syringe and had the syringe actually in the port ready to push through before I looked inside the chamber and realized how uncharacteristically full it seemed. Pediatric IV doses of anything are simply tiny. I was supposed to give him 0.1 mls and nearly gave him 1.0 mls. I needed a very large cup of tea after that. I was online manager for an organization about a decade ago. I was super tired and working late one Friday night when I screwed up and deleted their entire website. I threw up a "we're doing maintenance" message and spent the next 8 hours trying to find another copy of the code, discovering along the way that the organization did not have a single working backup. In the end, I went to the Internet Archive and saw that some of the text was there. So I went home at 4 in the morning, slept for a couple of hours and was back in the office by 7 AM Sat morning. I then spent the entire weekend locked in my seat grinding away to recreate the entire website from scratch. Graphics, JavaScript, applets, forms, HTML etc etc. I walked out the door about 4 AM Monday morning, and then wandered into the office by 9 AM like nothing had happened. The only fallout was a slow stream of calls and emails over the next 6 months saying that my page seems to have disappeared, which I blamed on a succession of different made-up reasons. I once was configuring the network firewall of the university I worked on and accidentally and without realizing toggled a switch that effectively cut all internet access of the university. I realized it only when someone in the room asked another person about the internet being weird, then it hit me. My heart started racing as I went back and correct the configuration setting. I cut the university from the world for about 5 minutes. It probably affected about 150k people, at the very least. The internet glitch was the official diagnose. You have been visited by Happy Snack. Comment keep happying Snacker to be happy forever. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.